everyone. Welcome back to the Bellevue Club Swim Team podcast. Today, we are excited to have Abi Liu, head coach of Peak Swimming in Northern California. Abi, how are you doing?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to see you guys and know that you guys are doing well and staying home and staying safe. So I'm doing the same. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, obviously, we want to use this opportunity to check up on you, and I'm very happy to hear that you're doing well. But B, kind of get your life story on, how you grew up, and how did you get into the world of coaching, and now you're head coach of Peak. I still remember at Winter Juniors, your boys sneaking up on us and beating us in the medley relays. We thought we had won, but here's Peak in the previous heats just kicking our butt. So. But yeah, how was it growing up in China? And talk to us about your childhood.
Yeah, that was actually exciting relay because they wanted to try to take down the national high school record of relay, but we end up about probably 0.6 short, but still, competing different heats and knowing like somebody faster maybe in the second heat really just light a fire under their butts. So that was fun. But yeah, so growing up in China, it's very, very different. I've shared some of the stories with some of my kids here, and they just thought like, what, how did you do that, right? It's very different. So I'm glad that I'm able to tell that story to you guys as well. Regular school versus sports school, and very different, right? Starting at the young age, when you're 7, 8 years old and first grade. Swimming was part of PE, which I think that US can really do something about it because the drowning rate is so high in the US in youth. And if we can adapt that swimming as a part of PE requirement rather than starting in high school, started in elementary school, that would really help with water safety as well as in our swimming community and becoming a lifestyle as well as continue in the competitive sports. But it's very different in the way I did it, the way I grew up, and I believe they're still doing a little bit of it nowadays. So we would do twice a week PE class. Our teacher will line us up, walk across the town, and to go take a swim class and just learn water safety. And we didn't have arm floaties or life vests and just jump in the water, and like one teacher watches about 30 of us and off you go. Good luck, right? Somehow I survived and consider myself a lucky one. But the funny part is there were sports school coaches watching on the sideline, and they watch how you learn and watch your physiques at 7 and 8 years old. And then they once a year, they go to your school and they measure 3 things, which I thought was really interesting. They measure your standing jump, they measure your height, and measure your wingspan. And then they ask you how tall your parents are and stuff. At 7 and 8 year old, how do you know your parents 5'4" and 5'6"? You can't tell. But that's okay, about this much, right? And then each year, about 8 girls and 8 boys from the entire city been selected, invited to the sports school. And so you feel a special bunch from your city right at the get-go. And go to the sports school. Initially, funny part on my part is my parents did not want me to go because the system is with the regular school, you just go through morning and afternoon classes. But when you go to the sports school, it's only half a day in the morning school and then classes, and then in afternoon you train. So my parents as a first grader, second grader, I don't want you to give up your school. But the way they did it is they do the exact same curriculum. It's just kind of filtered out and a little bit more concentrated on the key stuff. So I did not go. And so there were 7 girls and 8 boys got selected that year because I didn't go. And my PE teacher came to my house every single day of the week, for the entire week. And I just, that evil side of me, I played. Every time I get home, I'll cry. I want to be there. I want to go to the sports school. I want to be with my friends. And then I go to school, I'm just fine, right? And then I come home and I cry again, just try to get on my parents' nerve. So my parents initially then made an agreement, said, okay, we'll let you go and try 1 semester. if your grades come down, we save a seat at your regular school, which was a really good school. We save a seat at regular school, and you go right back if you drop your grades. And so, and I went with those conditions, and I did well through. So continue going from elementary school, second grade, all the way to middle school, equivalent to ninth grade, 10th grade, and the provincial team. And I started performing well in the city level competitions and provincial level competitions. The provincial team wanted me to go, and we ran into the same problem. My parents said, "No, you need to finish high school." And provincial. Once you get to provincial team, the school is optional. You train in the morning, you train in the afternoon, and you go to school maybe voluntarily. And so nobody really keep up with attendance. And as a teenager, no school, great. I'll be playing games all night. So my parents like, no, we don't trust you. You're not going. And yet again, all my friends went, and I feel I left out. And at that time, I actually was not really bummed because I had a really, really good coach who's very much devoted to me. And he said, look, if you need extra practices, I'll be there one-on-one with you in addition to our team practices. And I trusted him. And so that's something that I believe that, that trust and respect is so important, regardless what level of competition or what level of athlete you are. You need to have that with your coaches. And so I said, okay, I'll stay. And so I stayed in this city level sports school. Meanwhile, all my friends are in a professional team. And we went to kind of junior nationals. It's one of the big thing, like a youth, almost like youth Olympics in China once every 4 years. And I end up beating everybody in the country who trained in the provincial level. And I was the only city level girl in there, and I won the 200 back early on, many years ago. Who knows? I'm not going to reveal my age, but so that got me attention from the national team, and so the national team head coach contacted my coach and said we would like her to go to Beijing, and so at that time. This is it, right? My parents can't say no, and this is all I worked for my entire life. For my short, 14 years old of age, they said, "Okay, go try it," and promise me you still go to the nightly school voluntarily and with very good self-discipline. Which I said, okay, which I did. So I went at 14 years old, and it was one of the youngest national team members at the time. It was tough. I mean, kids grow up in the U.S., they just can't relate. When you go to the national team in the U.S., you just earn that status of a national team member. You may represent USA in some international meets, or you go to national training camp once or twice a year. But in China, at least during my time, I would leave home 350 days a year. I live in Beijing in a training camp with my coaches, with my teammates, coaches too, okay? And leave your family 350 days. And you stay in the training center. We get to go home 15 days a year. And that's not during Chinese New Year's, not during your birthday. It's in September and October, right after the second national championships. You get to go home 15 days, and you have to keep training every day, voluntarily. So, and early on, needless to say that, under that kind of system and that level of commitment and that expectation and pressure, really depends which way you look at it, or motivation, really taught me a lot about self-discipline and know what I want. During this whole journey, my parents had always tell me to come home. They're not the typical pushy parents, so-called tiger mom, tiger dads, that, you need to do this, and, why didn't you get 100%? Well, why didn't you break this record? They were never like that. I remember one year that I went home, and obviously, for swimming so much as a professional, that my body, you have aches and you have shoulder pains, and, I never complained about it, but I was just kind of, stretching it. And my dad just looked at me and put his hands on my shoulders, say, come home. I don't want my daughter being in pain. And I look at Dad, I said, Dad, this is my journey and I don't mind the pain and I'm enjoying it. And, I want to go through this journey myself, whether at the end, when you're putting a perfect dot at the end of your journey, or this is just some sort of scribble, but at least it's my decision. And I want to go through this journey and without regret. And so that's my philosophy is I do not want to look back and say, what ifs, right? There's no possibility for me to regret or no reason for me to say, what if and could have, should have. So I did that, and for 8 years in Beijing. And I really think that taught me so much. And besides, swimming and what I earned for me for the rest of my life. But my friends and my teammates, they are still, not to this day, my sisters and my brothers. I mean, think about it, right? You spend 350 days a year. I share much more with my best friends from the national team to this day than my own brother. And so it just really, I believe that just like nowadays, you're on a club team level, when you go through blood, sweat, and tears together, and when you were there for each other, and when you needed to hand somebody, lend your hand, say, just tap you, you doing okay? How you doing? Let's get through this. Let's through this. Coach Andrew gave us this killer set. A100s all out on 3 minutes. You got 2 more left, and you're throwing up, and somebody come over and lend you a bottle of Gatorade. I think that's a moment that you're going to remember forever, and not sometimes that you put on 20 years from now. And I truly don't remember like what we have done, in the pool. Really, I'm so old, but I do remember the fun stuff, the silly stuff, the crazy stuff that we did as teenagers with my teammates. Those last forever, and of course, teaches me the mental toughness. And like I said, I don't remember what I did, and I don't remember what the crazy stuff that coaches gave me. I remember one day I was in the pool. The coach gave me something crazy. Again, I don't remember that exactly. Something like 600-800 backstroke, something like unheard of. I was a backstroker. And I just felt like, okay, I'm standing up, and my head's above the water. My goggles start filling up. My goggles, like water coming up. I'm like, what? Goggles leaking already? I haven't even started this crazy set yet. But my tears, I was crying inside and tried to hide it and letting my goggles on. I'm like, that's impossible. And of course I had to do it. Right? You had no choice. You can't just say, hey, I quit and get out. You had no choice. So I started doing it, whatever that was. I clearly to this day told myself, say, Abby, if you can handle this, there's nothing else outside the pool is going to stop you, because this is so mentally and physically, emotionally, so much pain that you can handle this and you're next level. And so I did that. And to this day, I remember that very moment, what I said to myself. And this is what I carry on for the rest of my life. It toughens you. It's nothing else can compare that. So that's my growing up story in a nutshell. A fun fact, when I started swimming with the sports school as 8-year-old, we would have 3 morning workouts already, by the way. It's crazy. Imagine your 8-year-olds going, 5 o'clock in the water, but biking yourself to the pool, okay? In the winter or whatever. So I have a bicycle, and my mom the night before, she tried to prepare everything. She prepared my school backpack, my swimming backpack. In the winter, my hat, gloves, and masks. So they're just, the little girl doesn't get cold. Even to a point where she squeezes a toothpaste on top of the toothbrush to save me 10 seconds so I can sleep more. And then let's say I needed to wake up at 4:30, and if she wakes me up at 4:32, I will be crazy. I'd be crying, stomping all over the floor, and waking up in my entire household. My coach was really strict, very strict. And I'm like, you're gonna get me killed by my coach. No, my mom's like, trust me, everything's ready. Just go brush your teeth and again, the whole household's up by then, 4:32 in the morning. And I'm biking. I like imagine an 8-year-old have a backpack on the back and a backpack in the back rack of the bicycle. hat, gloves, and mask, and just biking for 25 minutes in the dark in the morning, 3 times a week to go to morning practice. Nowadays, I get up at 5 and 4:30. It's tough some days, but it just really starts that mentality early on. Imagine the 8-year-olds right now doing, I think it's borderline to child abuse. It's just different grown up experience, right?
As a parent, they would send someone after us in this day and age. If at 4:30 in the morning, I sent my daughter out with her backpack on her bike to go anywhere.
Where's
coming to
your
knock
parents?
on your door
right.
and take your kid from you.
I also think that by doing that, you're a lot more independent. And I was traveling, all over the country and eventually all over the world, whether by myself or with my team. But I feel comfortable. I think that the differences between being independent and still getting homesick is very well defined in me. At least I still miss my hometown. I still miss my grandma, who's 96-year-old, who hasn't been outside for 3.5 months, by the way, because of this coronavirus. And it's very uplifting and gives me the hope. And I'm thinking every day, if my 96-year-old grandma can do it and stay home and do it, I can do it. All of us can do it. We can handle it. And we still have a lot of freedom that we can still go to the park. We still can go out for a walk, for a run. I can still walk my dog. I work out with my kids every day. So it really, gave me a lot of hope. But I still get homesick. I'm independent. I'm capable of being on my own. But at the same time, I get homesick and I miss them a lot.
I understand that.
Yeah, right?
Take us through kind of, that's the beginning of Abby's age group swimming arc. Kind of when you're on that path in China, clearly international meets, the games is your goal. When does that sort of crest? When is how do they determine when your swimming career is over? Because I'm going to guess that wasn't your choice.
Actually, I was very lucky. That was my choice. Very lucky. And I'm one of the few, by the way. So funny enough, back in my days, getting onto an airplane is a privilege. And going to a foreign country is you're way above everybody else. It's like elite status. So it's very different in a whole experience. So my goal was like, okay, I want to take an airplane, go to, a domestic meet. And that was one of the goals. The hometown I grew up, my hometown, Wenzhou, which is southern of China in Zhejiang province, didn't have airport, didn't have train station. Okay. We have Greyhound buses and that's all we got. So, and you go through the winding roads and the hillside and there will be mudslides. And so I've taken the longest, nowadays, like they have highways and stuff, it would be like 4 hours. But I've taken the longest journey from my city to the capital city, which is, a lot of age group meets happened then, 21 hours to get there. and you try to race. So yeah, and on the Greyhound bus, it's not like in your mom and dad's, luxury SUV and you can stretch your legs out. No, 21 hours. But that was my thing that, I get to travel. I get to be with my teammates and go. And so that was early on. But then until I was 12, 13, I started going to national meets and started meeting a lot more people. And then until I was 14 and get to national team, then that's when I really take the planes all over the country, all over the world. The very first meet, 1989, in Indonesia, Jakarta. And it was one of my very first international meet. And I believe that with all the meets I've gone through, this was the best one for me. I feel like that, I remember that experience the most. First, just the airplane ride. I got so air sick and used up in my group. Actually, there were about 3-4 of us. We all got really air sick. flying from Beijing to Singapore, and then Singapore to Jakarta. We used up all the bags that they have for, the vomit bags. And so they keep bringing us bags and the nausea pills, and we just kept throwing up because we didn't really take that much of plane rides. So we're not used to that kind of elevation and pressure. So, but the flight attendants were very nice because we're national team members, and we have the flag on our chest. By the way, if you're not national team, you're not allowed to print flags on any sports apparel, and unless you're really representing your country. So it makes it very special. When you say national team, it is truly the national team. So anyway, just a little fun facts. So we flew to Singapore, and then Singapore to Jakarta. During that time, that year, 1989, was the very first time the Chinese government had reestablished the relationship with Indonesia. Since 1972 or 73. They basically cut off, they broke up, they divorced. China and Indonesia divorced during the early 70s. But there was still a lot of local Chinese people there, and they were, being targeted and as the enemy, as the outsider. A little bit to what we're going through right now, some of the hate crimes happening now in the US to Asian people. I hope this is going to pass, and I hope we'll stay strong together and really see this as one community. Anyhow, I arrived there. The local Chinese people were so welcoming because we were the very first sports group that visiting them. And some of the 2 generations that they showed up in our hotel just welcoming us. So every morning I got rice porridge and Chinese donuts and brought to my hotel by the local Chinese people. And just so that, they know that we probably not used to different kind of foods. And so they brought our traditional, Chinese breakfast to us. And that was one of the very best memories for me to compete, like my competition internationally. It's just so different and so much more meaningful to all the other meets that I have had in the past.
That's awesome. How, towards like the end, how did you go through that phase of transitioning out of being a competitive swimmer? And then on top of that, where did your Chinese days to your US days start, and how did that happen?
Right. So that was the other question is, it was by my choice. And in China, there's a book per household. And so, yes, no joke, to this day, it's like a censor book, right? Let's say mom and dad, their first page and second page, okay? And then when you add kid and their name and the information on the third page, when you add another kid, then, so this is how they keep tracking, okay, how many people in your household. And in the olden days, there's quota for certain things, right? Quota for, not in my era, my grandpa's era, quota for water, quota for rice, quota for sugar. But when get to my generation, you can buy stuff. But that is the system that they keep tracking how much you're supposed to be getting, okay? And when I went to national team, the provincial team came and said, we need to take her name out of that last page and bring her all the information, all her basically holdings to the provincial team. So that way, basically, they can control me, where I can go, where, everything. Like basically, eventually, if I go to apply a job and go to a company, that they need to release that information to them. So the book keeps kind of transferring to your next step of your journey in your life.
But at that point, it's almost like the provincial team is taking custody of you.
Correct.
Use
exactly.
Kind of our vernacular.
Right.
Your parents are giving up custody to your team.
Exactly.
For you to go live with them.
Very different, right?
Yeah.
And I was 14, by the way. So my mom said no. And so I've heard a lot of stories about people who wanted to retire, who also, like, whether by the old age or by the loss of interest or by injury, who wanted to retire, but they couldn't because the provincial team said, well, we got this. You can't retire until we release you, or you can't go outside of provincial team, go play another job. So I told my mom, I said, look, do whatever you can, hold that, keep it in the house. And my mom basically told them, said, look, I only have one daughter and I want to keep her close by us. And so they came twice, tried to do that. And my mom just, held her ground pretty strong. So we were able to keep that. So then later on, when I applied to come to the US, I needed to get a passport first. My old passport was different. When I travel with the national team, the passport is different. It's a business passport. It's not a personal passport. So there's various level of passports. So I was able to apply personal passport because I have a control of my own withholdings, so-called. So that's why it was by my decision, but many were not their decision.
So how old were you when you kind of stopped swimming, and when did you come to the US, and how did coaching kind of play into that piece of it? Were you coaching in China first?
No. Well, some summer camp helping my coach back in hometown. When I returned from national team visiting, and he'll ask me to coach. After 1996 Olympic trials, which I got sick and I did not place top 2, and so I did not go to the Atlanta Olympics. I decided to retire, come home. And this is I feel very fortunate. Every journey is my own decision. In backtrack, 95, when I went home visit, October of 1995, my parents sat me down and said, you have this opportunity, this other school in Shanghai University offered you a position to go to school there. Let's stop it, let's have you go there. And I said, no. And I said, I've gone this far, and it's been 6-7 years. And I want to be my decision. And whether I want to go to the Olympic trials, whether if it's going to be great, I get to go. And I would go to school after, or it's going to be terrible, but it's my decision. And so we sat there in my living room. 3 of us cried our eyes out. Everybody was very emotional. My parents are just worried that I'm going to get hurt, emotionally and physically. And I just want to continue and try to convince them. So we were all very emotional. So I went to the trials, and unfortunately I did get sick before that, and I didn't do so well. And that very night, we were in a different city other than Beijing. Beijing was our base, right? My coach said, we want you to stay. And I think I can do a better job. My coach was very honest, and, he's like, we should keep you healthy. I'm like, that's not your position, not your decision. You can't prevent that. And he's like, we want you to stay on the national team. And the leader of national team contacted me later on saying, I want you to be a leader figure on our team. The team is younger and you've been there for a while. The young kids really look up to you. I said, nope, I'm done. I finished this journey. I put this dot. This is kind of a scribble. I'm done. So very next day, I took a train from that city back to Beijing. I packed all my stuff, flew home. I'm done. So, and my parents, typically it's my mom, only one of the parents would go to the airport and pick me up. But that trip, both came. And my mom said, this is different because you're coming home. You're coming home. And I still get really emotional to this day. It's just that, their daughter finally is coming home. And so they both picked me up at the airport. But within that year, I believe later that year, University of Nevada, Reno contacted me, and UNR contacted me. And their diving coach is a Chinese coach who read an article about me. And so they said, hey, we would like to have you there. And I was like, is there such thing? Like, what do you mean, like, for scholarship? And I had no idea, never heard about athletic scholarship. And like, what do you mean, like, training in college? Back then, many colleges in China, they don't really have the student athletes so-called categories. And so I learned a little bit about that. And then my dad contacted a dear friend of his who lived in New York. I said, is there such thing? Like, what is this college and you can swim, compete, you know, because this is all the way that I grew up is the only way that we knew, right? How sports go, right? And then so his friend contacted his lawyer, an immigration lawyer, is like, look over this and what's going on. So the lawyer looked at my information, all my documents, and said, you know what? She can apply for a green card right away because her establishment and achievement, U.S. Immigration has a special quota each year for people with expertise. So I actually came in with a green card. I'm very lucky that then green card and attended University of Nevada, Reno. I swam there for them for 2 years, didn't really enjoy it. Now I look back, if I can do it again, I would have finished it. But I was dealing with a lot of changes. I didn't know a single word of English. On my flight from Shanghai to San Francisco, it was a United Airline flight. It wasn't Air China. So nobody could help me. And my bag was really big and couldn't fit over the overhead bin. And the flight attendant looked at me and I said, this bag is too big. And she understood me. I was jumping up and down, like, how did she understand me? I was like, okay, with this bag is too big. So like 4 or 5 words, and she understood me. Like, that's all I knew. And landed in San Francisco and, asked all over and finally find my connect flight and landed in Reno. And so it was very difficult. In addition to taking ESL classes, I was immediately thrown into regular college courses. Now, mind you that it was my high school years were more of a volunteer schooling, remember, in Beijing. So I did, I attended. But my problem wasn't understanding the material. It was more understanding language, the problem. So I had a tutor who really just basically was my translator, translating the questions and requirements, and I was able to complete that. So the language took me about 6 to 8 months, just kind of start being able to communicate with people a little better. Still broken English. I didn't even know how to type. I don't know how to type, how to use a computer and everything, like essays, and all have to type up and this many words and this, double space. I'm like, what is that? It really just throw me in a complete uncomfortable new environment and got dropped in the middle of Reno. So that was one of the difficulties. And secondly is the competition schedule was very different for me. When I used to compete, it was 6 days for national meets, 6 days. I swam 3 events in 6 days. First day is 400 IM, and then third day is 100 back, and the last day is 200 back, just space out. It was fine. But then a college meets, I had to swim 3-4 events, relays included, within 2 hours. The expectation of every time I race, I'm 100% in. It's not like, okay, this is just another swim. My approach was very different. And so it was very difficult for me. So 2 years into it, I started looking for jobs. And I took a couple of classes like computer information system class and C+ class. I was like, this is all very foreign language to me, right? And besides learning English, I now have to learn another language. This is very foreign to me. But I started questioning myself, what am I good at? What is my passion? What makes me really get up and willing to do things that come back to swimming. So now I'm not swimming, and how do I still be connected to the sport? And I start looking for coaching jobs, and I want to give back, and I want to really bring the differences of the two systems, of the two different cultures, and see how I can merge the two. And it's a personal growth as well, as I believe that share my experience with others, bring a different perspectives. Hopefully that it will be beneficial for them at the end. So I started looking for that. My college coach, Mike Anderson, told me, said, no, you are on the full scholarship. Why would you give up? Nobody give up a full ride. just finish school, finish school. So I looked at him, I said, Mike, this is so not Chinese side of me, I think, if I may say that. Mike, what would you do after you get a degree? He goes, go look for a job. And I said, well, Mike, I have a job offer right here. And I can always go back to school, and it's okay. And I don't have to follow, you must go to school for 4 years, and that's fine. And so he then said, promise me you're going to go back and finish it. And I said, absolutely. So I started coaching at the Enza Cupertino Aquatics, DACA, for the 10 and under groups. And it was really, really great experience. I learned so much. Not only allows me to speak more and make more mistakes, and kids are so honest, right? If you say something wrong, they will correct you. So for me, they'll tell you right then, in one way or another. For me, it was a really cool way to learn communication and the different styles of communication, and understand how American youth grown up, because they can talk back to the coach. What? It was very different. And eventually I went back to school to San Jose State, and I studied kinesiology, emphasizing exercise physiology. That was the best decision I made, I believe, because immediately I noticed the way I coach changed. The way I convey information changed. Because always used to be like, okay, you should feel this way, okay? This is supposed to be this way, because it's all from my own personal feelings, so-called, or physical feelings, and relating to that. Versus now I'm coaching, I can have a scientific backup to it. Like, you're doing this because of this. And so if you're able to combine the two, right, the experience is priceless. But at the same time, if you back up with scientific data, it's much more convincing, and you kind of know what, you can act it that you know what you're talking about sometimes. But yeah, so that really changed my coaching style, and I really enjoy it. I just, I still, to this day, I say I'm a fan and a student of the sport. I still learn every day from my colleagues, with you guys, from the students or the kids that I coach every day, because their upbringing, their growing up experience is completely different than mine. And how can we work together? How can we learn from each other? Is a very, very unique thing for me. And I consider myself very lucky that I basically lived 2 lives, right? Double life, right? One in China, very different, and one here. And somehow, being able to benefit from both. I'm very fortunate.
You and I met 10 years ago at the Olympic Training Center at a diversity camp.
Yeah.
In the cafeteria, while I was going over videos that I had just gotten from Russell, Mark, and you jumped right next to me and slid right in. You're like, what do you have there?
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about kind of the melding of the two styles and what that actually means to you. You're known as a great stroke technician.
Thank you.
What is it that, especially in your younger kids, you feel like makes them better senior swimmers, and what are you trying to impart from your past and kind of combine with your present in the water from a swimming fundamental standpoint for those little guys?
I think there are 3 things. If you look at the traditional Eastern swimmer versus Western swimmer, Eastern swimmer were known for their precision and the accuracy. Western swimmer known for their strength and power. My coach always tell me, like, okay, you need to make sure your stroke is so efficient so that, when you compete with those Westerners, right? And you can still win by the precision, by technique, not by power, because from physique-wise, you may not win. You may not be powerful, which, again, that's completely not true. I mean, nowadays, you look, I have some Chinese American kids who's giant, and they're really strong. For example, Ethan whose legs, I mean, it's known how powerful he is, right? But that idea instilled in me very, very early on age. Everything's about strokes and accuracy. I grew up in an indoor pool, 4 lanes, 25 meters, moldy walls, and you can't touch it because it's really slimy, and the water is green, and you come out and you do this, and it's all green, right? My coach will look at, okay, the water looks a little different. Here comes the powder chlorine, and just go. just flying. And while we're swimming in the water, okay, I'm convinced that that's why I have asthma. But it's just, there's just not a lot of information out there. But he was, I still wish we can do that. I had a mirrors hanging on the roof. I swim backstroke, back and forth. I see myself. The mirror eventually rusted and all that, but I still somehow peek through the rust and I can see myself. I thought that was one of the brilliant things that, you know, he did. So really just getting that visualization and accuracy. We did a lot of demos on land, which I actually am making all my kids do nowadays since they can't be in a pool. We do a lot of air swimming. And ironically, the movement pattern is very similar to what they do in the water. And so
you have them doing it in front of a mirror, or
I have them doing it in front of a mirror with a few criteria. Number one, they do, let's say it's a 100-yard race. I wanted them to do the exact same stroke count as they would do in an actual race. So we do a lot of stroke count stuff so they know exactly how many strokes per lap, first, second, third, fourth lap. The number varies. I want them to do the exact same. Okay, some actually adds like a turn and come back and do more, and adds a turn, come back. And that's the first criteria, stroke count. Second criteria is I want them to do about 8 100s, and they're gonna videotape all 8 of them. And they send me the 8 clips. I don't look the first 6. I look the 7th and 8th when they're actually fatigued, okay? Imagine even just without, you just do this for 40 strokes, your arms get pretty tired. And when I look at them, I go frame by frame, analyze their strokes, and I take screenshots on that exact moment I want, and I put my analysis in there. I send it back to them, and they go, that sounds like exactly the same thing that you've been telling me that when I'm swimming in a pool. But with the pool environment, it's a little harder to control your body movements, or your awareness is a little bit difficult to control versus you're on land where you can see yourself in front of the mirror. So they're able to make the corrections and adjustments nowadays, because I believe this is the best time to learn best technique right now. They don't get to practice their habits. This is week number 8. It's very easy to establish new movement patterns and muscle memories. So why not doing it when you're here, when you have this time? So they're not only they're doing it, they can see themselves. So it's double benefits to me, is that you can communicate with them better and more clearly with what you want to see. And at the same time, they can make an easy adjustment, and they videotape it themselves. They can go back and look at it. So that was to growing up about technique and how important that is. That's the first part. And second part is the experience of learning. And to me, is how do you make it fun and relatable for the kids to learn? For example, like we talk about, the old me would be like, hey, just go fast swimming in a fast turn, versus, okay, you go, if you are a tennis ball and you throw it hard against the wall, the ball's gonna bounce back. That's something that's relatable, right? So how do you change from an obvious thing to you as an adult, because your cognitive development is completely different than the cognitive development as a 10-year-old or 14-year-old and an 18-year-old. 18-year-olds, like, they're smarter than me. They learn their physics, and they can tell me why and why what. But like, how do you teach different language to the different age group, the appropriate age group with that appropriate language? And that, to me, is the key. We all know, as coaches, we all know what to do, but how do we communicate that information to a way to the athletes that is understandable, relatable, and make it fun, right? So they, like, every time they come to the pool, they think about tennis balls. And so it's something that you put that image in their head early on. That's the second thing. The very last part is consistency. When you see something, you say something. If you only say, hey, fast turns once a week, you're not going to get fast turns. Okay. If your fast turns maybe 3 times a day, maybe you get better, right? If you're fast times 8 times a day, you're going to get better results. So I think the consistency is the key. You don't have to overwhelm them, say five, six things. You're not going to get anything done, but consistently with one or two things to establish. And then you build the ladder on top of that. To me, those are three keys.
Yeah. Love that. We've talked about, just consistency in like the words that we use or in the descriptions among different age groups and stuff. And I think over the past couple of years, especially with like Andrew likes to send a different coach each time we have a kid in a diversity camp or a national select camp, you can go on the coaches track. And so I feel like every time we come back, and that's kind of always the same conversation in a good way that we have, it's a reminder, there's always some discussion in one of the learning, windows for the coaches, that it's all about what you say and how you say it.
Right. And,
then the coaches discuss things that they find helpful, that the kids can, internalize what you say better. And I don't know, I think that's been good for all of us too.
Well, even though within the same group of kids, and because their background, because their understanding level can be different too, right? So you can go, it's definitely not one mode fits all. Definitely use different verbiage and different descriptions so that they can relate. And that includes, some kids are more visual, some kids are more auditory, and some kids are more tactile sensation. So some of you might need to pull it out and give them like a little pressure on the block, say, hey, this is how you're supposed to feel. And some just say, hey, make a shape like, you're hovering over an exercise ball. So it's a very different way to convey that message. And I believe that is really the art of coaching.
Yeah. It's always interesting to me. I mean, like I have a teaching background. I feel I've just learned and learned from my continuous coaching, but still, I'll think I'll be doing an okay job and then I'll pull someone out. And obviously I'm pulling them out because they haven't gotten it. And I feel like I've explained it, a few different ways for them to get it. And then finally, I try my fifth way of getting them to do it. And then it finally clicks and I'm like, okay, got to put that in my toolbox that this person, does well with it this way. You just have to figure it out with every kid, and it takes some time, but it's always fun and exciting when it does click. So
there's another thing that at least my senior group's been doing, which I thought was really eye-opening. And for me as a coach, it's like my job is done. I can just sit back and watch. I have 3 or 4 kids consistently stay after practice, and they do extra warm down. They do extra drill, and they try to figure out things. And sometimes they ask, hey, Coach Abby, can you take a look at this? And some they just do it on their own. And then little by little, some other kids, not outside of those 3 to 4 kids, they will stay, say, hey, Jason, can you look at my breaststroke pull down? And so they're now working with each other. And to me, it's a coach's dream. I just sit back, okay? They're coaching each other. Of course, if I see some wrong information being, passed, and I can say, hey, maybe try this. But they stay after. The hardest thing is get them out of the pool. Hey, you're done. Get out. I don't want you to spend any more time in the pool. That's a beautiful thing that happens. And so that encourages leadership, encourages team unity, encourages partnership, outside of doing extra technique work. And the kids can speak in their language. They can relate better, because for us, we are the main coaches. We're not adults. What do you know, right? It's just they have their own way to describe the things that they can understand each other better in a way.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
That's a testament to the culture you've built, and a continuous learning culture that you've cultivated since they were little kids. You know that. And that that's your philosophy. How do you create that and impart that onto a coaching staff, and then make the kids, as they're coming up, understand that that's an important part? This constant learning is just as important as constantly working hard. Back to melding the two ideas of technique and power, or Eastern and Western strengths, or whichever way you want to look at it.
Right. I sometimes, if my kids are doing a long set, I'll just walk over and look at what they do. I'm like, okay, that's a good idea. I'm gonna have my kids use that. Or sometimes if we've been already in the water and they're on the way in, and the other coaching staff will stand next to me and say, hey, what you guys doing? And we'll just share with them. So from very early on, there is no hierarchy in our coaching staff. It's not like I know more than you. You know, I'm older, so I'm better. I'm more senior. There's no such thing. It's a very open-minded sharing idea. If I see something good, I said, hey, can I try that with my kids? So they know that it's a sharing platform that we do it together. I come across something, hey, what do you guys think about this? Or I tried this and maybe not sure if it's going to work, or vice versa. You know, my favorite part is actually, if I can, and someday after I retired, I'm going to pick a group just for my own enjoyment to coach. It's going to be 10 and unders. And I feel like the 10 and unders is the best because, one, they're so cute, and anything you say, they believe it. And I tell them I'm 340 years old, and they say, yes, you're 340 years old. And, you know, they do anything for you. But at the same time, you can establish that learning culture very early on. So even I watch the kids play, and that give me ideas what to do. And I tell them, and I don't say, hey, I know everything, right? But I say, hey, the other day I was watching you play this, and this is how we came up with this drill. So I think that from within the staff team, within the kids, even between themselves, we all know that there's so much to learn from others, and we can do that.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I have liked like all of my coaches that I've had, I've liked, and I've gotten something from all of them. But when I think about that, the one that comes up the most with the baseline was my 10
Yeah,
coach.
they're so creative. They're so creative.
And he had just come out of college. Actually, he ended up coaching for Bellevue Club later on, but he had just gotten out of college, and you know, he would almost treat us like little college swimmers. You know, he wouldn't baby us, and he gave us things to work on that were really basic, you know, underwaters, holding your breath, dolphin kicks, but he didn't let up on it. I don't know. And it just obviously lasted with me my whole swimming career, my coaching career. And that's when I was 10.
Well, that's where I feel there's a shift, right? For me, as far as coaching wise, and I believe coaching style wise, I believe there's also a culture shift within myself, within me. In the beginning, I was known for the mean coach. That was me. And the rumor was, this mean coach lines up her, this is a complete rumor, by the way. It is nothing true, okay? This mean coach lines up her swimmers outside the pool, and she has a bamboo stick and marching them onto the pool deck. And I might have told the story about my old coach who had a bamboo stick when we were swimming, and then and somehow it was my weapon of marching my kids in. And now I'm known for a strict coach. And I believe the mean and strict are very different, okay? With the mean, it's just not respectful, right? And with the strict, that I respect your goals, and your goals that shared with me, I'm gonna hold you accountable. And when you are not, I'm calling you out. And I think that is difference between, you know, mean and strict. So, but definitely that changed because I think that learning the different cultures better, for me as I get older, I'm able to really having that human connection better in a way, I think. Not like a coaching robot per se, you know, like a human coach.
Definitely.
Love it. I love it. Abby, obviously with you being in California and us being here in Washington, you know, we got another month of this at the very least. And, you know, we're all going through a crazy time. You mentioned 8 weeks that we've been doing this. You know, your grandma's been inside for 3.5 months. And you find a lot of encouragement from her. You know, what kind of words of encouragement, words of advice can you provide for our team or anyone that kind of tunes in during this time?
You can make lemonade out of lemons. That would be, you know, as coaches, we are the cheerleaders, but how much can you be a cheerleader? And for 50 some days now, right? You know, and we're humans too. And I want to approach as coaches before I talk about swimmers and team. We have to take care of ourselves before others. My wife often say, oxygen mask, you know, when you take an airplane ride, okay, they tell you to put an oxygen mask on yourself before your children or before others, before helping others. how do we stay well and be balanced and still stay positive? There are certain days I'm not going to lie and wake up like just another groundhog today, right? And, to repeat, go do this, and I'll repeat. But I find myself that I am learning again a lot. Every morning, I either take a webinar or go back to American Swim Coaches Association, rewatch some old talks. And there's a Chinese saying that when you rewatch something, you have a better understanding of that material. So I give myself about an hour and a half, just do the study for myself, because I usually didn't have time. Self-care, I hated running as a swimmer because my ankles were so flexible and it just wobbly all over land. I'm just basically not a land animal, but because I have a puppy, the puppy needs to run his energy out. So I run with him. I feel good after, and helping others. So every day at 2 p.m., I help about 10 to 12 women. They get online. I work out with them. I write daily workout. I work out with them. So they love it. So even on the weekends, they text me, go, it's 2 p.m. I'm feeling workout withdrawal, because we don't work out on the weekends. That's the 2 days that they get to recover. Okay. And I check in with one friend. If the friends whom I haven't talked to for a while, I either FaceTime them or call them, one friend a day, and just check in. And at 4 p.m., I meet with my kids. But on the upside of this is I don't get up at 4 a.m. for morning practice. As coaches, you may say, hey, I love morning practice, but you're that 1%, right? I'm that 99% I get to sleep in. I have consistent early dinner time. I don't have dinner at 8:30, 9 o'clock. We all know how unhealthy that is. Okay, 5:30 is my dinner time. It's my family dinner time. I'm actually not eating alone. So as coach, I mean, I find I have to look at in these positive sides of it during this time. With the kids, they got a lot done. My kids got a lot done. I feel like they are so much stronger than before. Monday, Wednesday, Thursdays, we do drive-in together. We're able to do much longer drive-in rather than crunched for water time. I got to get in, it's like 30, 40 minutes. But now we get to do hour 15, and we have a progression. And we also talked earlier about, stroke technique, and you still get a lot of done, and ask them to do visualization. Usually we do visualization 2 weeks before a big meet. But now they get to do it every day. I said, by the time you get back in the pool of next race, you've done that done that race hundreds of times. But it's not going to be 10 minutes of visualization. I want you to start with 2, knowing how difficult that is, try to stay focused. As you practice minute and a half and 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, then you can add more details to your visualization. Then you can go from 53 to 100 back, or to 200 IM, and eventually build that. That's a mental skill that they have. Every Tuesday, we meet with a sports psychologist. And I myself have learned so much about, how this whole mindset stuff going. And right now, currently, we're going through confidence and, what are the elements and what controls that. I'm learning a lot, and the kids are too. And they get a chance to share with each other, and they get a chance to do these sports psychology kind of project together. Every Friday is a team project day or guest speaker day. We've had, fortunate enough, have Brendan Hansen and Abi Liu so far spoke with us. And this week is Andrew Salaskar and going to speak with our kids. So, I mean, I think it's really truly speaks the strength of our community. People showing up, people step up and wanting to help, wanting to offer their advice, wanting to give that sense of unity and hope to keep everybody together. So really fortunate, and this is our community. This is one family. Even though you're in Washington, I'm in California, we're still family. So the kids also doing team project, the group project. I think I shared with you, Andrew, that we did baby picture contest, right? Mm-hmm. So they all send me baby pictures. They have to send me the pictures before they turn to 2 years old. So it's very hard to tell. and we'll sit back and I'll put it on the screen and they sit back with the popcorn on the couch. It's like, this is so-and-so. No. So it was really, really fun for them. And we did a crayon melting party, which you tie a bunch of crayon on top of a piece of paper and tape it down. And then you use hair dryer and let it melt down. And then we put a stencil. And so we make a team letter out of it. So they were really, really good. And then we did a cooking stuff. So the kids started coming up and with the cooking stuff. So last weekend I told them, I said, look, I want you to unplug. You guys in front of the computer during your Zoom meetings all day long. On the weekend, don't. Besides watching the Jordan documentary. And for me, and you guys know me. I mean, for me, it's all about Jordan shoes, right? But but the Jordan documentary. Other than that, I want you to unplug. Get out and go home. Make a dish with your parents and send me the video. So I've done a lot of great videos and great recipes and all. So they actually had fun. So learn something. I think that take this time. You don't only have to learn in school. You don't only have to learn to be in a pool. There's so much to learn, and especially during this time, there's so many great resources out there are actually free. And allow you to, actually for me, it's like almost overwhelmed with the resources. This webinar. I have to be selective. Like, what do I want to see and how do I want to manage my time rather than sitting in front of a computer all day? There's a lot of choice, but do make that routine, do make that schedule, do make this time as a prime learning time. And when you come out of this, you're gonna be stronger. Because dryland wise, I'm sure you guys are doing strength conditioning, you're doing aerobics. Right now, we're doing dryland with a snorkel on, with a mask. They're doing it, so their heart rate's up there, right? And stroke technique, they're working on the accuracy. They're working on the change, working on the adjustment. So when they get back in the water, the only differences to me is the feeling in a water environment. That typically takes like 10 days to be over, and that's it. So they're not missing anything. They're not losing anything because they're not in disadvantage because nobody is training anyways. If you utilize this time, learn more, by the time you actually get back in the water, you're gonna be ahead.
I love it. And Abi, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Awesome to see you. Please stay healthy. Please send our best to your family, and we'll hopefully see you on the pool deck soon, okay?
Right. You guys take care, and thank you so much for having me. Great seeing you guys as well.
Yeah, you too, Abby.
Thank you,
Abby.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.